Hey, this is Anna Urick, and I'm going to go over my static vision board for our design research class. So the holiday that I chose is Earth Day and decided to do an Earth Day virtual teach-in. I did a lot of revisions to my onlyness statement, so I want to go ahead and read it just so that we can see that I condensed it quite a bit from where I was originally at. But it says Earth Day Virtual Teach-In is the only one-day online event in Gainesville, Florida to equip both current and aspiring conservationists with knowledge and resources through high-quality digital learning opportunities. So hopefully from that you kind of understand that the need is going to be understanding, right? It's about teaching and learning, gaining knowledge, getting information. So the first attribute we're looking at is educational. In the design itself, how I wanted to approach educational is just with being pretty minimalist in the design, with especially like with the chosen shapes. I chose a circle to be the most prominent thing. Wanted to provide a lot of visual cues when we go to further this project, like with the imagery, using icons and things like that, just so that they know what to expect to learn about. The second attribute is I wanted it to feel peaceful. With it being a conservation or preservation and looking at environmental understandings, wanting it to feel harmonious, having mostly analogous colors that are cool tones just to help kind of be relaxing and peaceful, and even the dark magenta that I chose within it has a more rich violet to it than say like a bright hot pink magenta, and that's to emphasize that desire for the environmental harmony, harmony with nature, peaceful. The third attribute is wanting things to be identifiable. So at the bottom of the layout, I have several icons that I'm using to help bring out the brand recognition, but also in case that there will be learners who are specifically looking for land, water, wildlife, energy, or recycling topics. Those being the 5 main things that there would be to learn about. And so these icons help kind of categorize that information and the resources that are going to be available for them. I'd like to talk about the design principles and kind of where I got to with my design decisions. So first one is balance, right? So in the layout that I chose, we definitely have a lot of asymmetry, and that's just because I kind of wanted to counterbalance things. So I balanced the larger images. We have like the big butterfly is also balanced by a large sunset photograph. The text in the top left is balanced by the additional icons and smaller, more detailed items in the bottom right. That also applies like with the proportion. So looking at that, I really wanted to look at the typography in particular. I wanted to use a script, and so script can be really hard to read sometimes. But I think if you use it correctly and use it as a way, which I'll talk again for emphasis, I think that there's real value in doing that. And so proportion to the typography is how the script is balanced with the other block or even the sans serif type. So this helps so that it's legible. It also doesn't overpower the rest of the text, like the script isn't too weighty. It's pretty simple. One of the things that I looked up and was kind of learning about was using the rule of thirds, right? So attributing that to the overall layout as a guideline. Now it's not exactly cut into thirds, but there's definitely a larger section that's at the very top, a middle, and a bottom when we look at the overall layout. Right, so the next thing is rhythm. So there's a lot of rhythm and a lot of movement in this design, and I did that with the repeating circles, and that's just because I want to make sure there's consistency. Earth Day, we think of the earth, right, and the very round rock that we live on. Granted, when you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, it's not actually round, but that's what people think of, right, is a circle. And so using that shape, and repeating that, and again, so consistency makes the user, the viewer, more comfortable, right? So keeping things with the eye very familiar, especially with all of the different elements. So even with, if you look down at like the icons and the script that I chose, the script font, a lot of those lines and things are going to be very similar in weight. just to keep with that consistency and to try to keep the rhythm and the flow of it, if you will. Going down to emphasis, color is the main emphasis on this vision board. Earth Day already has a lot of preconceived notions about what it comes to for color choices, right? Most people are going to assume to use the blue and green. And I did that. But I would try to go a little bit deeper than that, going beyond just the typical blue and green, in that I used the images, especially the larger images. I really wanted to convey the color palette that I drew from that. And so from In the Sunset is where we get kind of that dark magenta, or in some of the butterfly's wings, and obviously the color of the flower that the butterfly is landing on is where we get that magenta color. The shade of blue that I went with is definitely evident in, again, the sunset, but also in the water, right? The waterways that we're going to be talking about, water conservation. So I wanted to pull from that. The greens are natural, right? It's what we think of with refreshing and rebirth and all things that are outdoors. I mean, the whole movement is called being green, right? So I figured that's probably a good reason to use that color. The contrasting color of the dark magenta in the title compared to the light blue, again, was just a way to add emphasis, using the block instead of the script for part of it. Earth Day, Earth is strong and foundational, and so emphasizing that concept with the typeface versus the script, feeling very freeing. Got two more here. So unity. Again, I feel like this is really tied to rhythm in this design, and also in the color palette. So taking a step back from it, like looking at the overall layout, unity is definitely achieved with a minimalist approach, with the larger elements showing knowing the smaller elements like the icons and smaller images are going to be more detailed and visually taxing. So that's where the unity kind of comes in. I just want it to be cohesive, right? Want it to all go together. Again, with the font using the heavy capitalized is very similar to then the smaller text font, still sans serif and pretty minimalistic when we look at it. Finally, if we talk about proximity and space, we see that that's achieved through grouping of text versus typography. So in the left-hand corners where I've got all of the text, whereas in the bottom right-hand corner is more of those detailed, the smaller images and icons. So obviously this is a work in progress. I believe it's supposed to be like a first draft, so I might have gone a little bit further than a first draft. But I know the icons need some work, and because I need them to be more similar. So I know that that's something when I have more time to be able to change and fix and make it more